Well done. Well done.
And just pardon you. That's your first one.
I needed all the help I could get for going short.
So if you don't recognize them, folks, members of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies gathered there. The JSIC gathered with President Biden and Vice President Harris in the President's Room, the space that we're seeing here.
Friends, when they leave this room, they're going towards the Ohio clock. Now, the Ohio clock. Friends, when the president and vice president leaves this room, they're going towards the Ohio clock. Now, the Ohio clock has.
Why is it called the Ohio clock?
Well, it's interesting. A senator from Connecticut, Senator David Daggett, asked a clockmaker from Philadelphia, Thomas Voigt, to complete it. He does in 1816, but Ohio came to the Union in 1803. I don't quite get it.
It's a mystery, and no one knows the answer. This clock has come to be known as the Ohio clock. It stands in the Senate hallway, which we're going to be seeing the party passing through soon on their way to the rotunda for the presentation of gifts. We're just wrapping up the signing ceremony here. And so we're on the Senate side of the building in these hallways, which are beautifully decorated. Again, if we can call your attention to the floor for just a second.
Oh.
Minton tiles. They're an encaustic tile, which means that the way that they're glazed is a little bit different than the kind of tile we're used to in our kitchens and baths. They're made in Stoke-upon-Trent, England. They're custom made for the Capitol, hallways lined with these.
Friends, don't just think that the members can walk on these tiles. You can. How? Visit Congress. Janet, I think the number one question that's asked of us, how do I visit Congress? If not the question within the top three. And depending on what part of the building you're in, you will likely walk on these tiles. They're not something that's just sacred for the members. To the contrary.
That's a great point. The one place you'll see the Minton tiles like that is on the first floor on the Senate half of the building,
Yes.
which we won't be seeing on our cameras today, but we can normally take folks there on tour. The hallways were decorated by Constantino Brumidi, the artist who painted the frescoes inside the Capitol that we were looking at a little bit earlier.
I'm not done with this Ohio clock. So, ladies and gentlemen, there was a person known as the man with the green hat. Yes, during Prohibition, he used to sell alcohol in the House office buildings. It was known he had an office. He was exposed, and he moves to the Senate side. and legend has it, in the Ohio clock, spirits might have been kept in that clock, and members had access to it.
I mean, the period where alcohol sale, manufacture, distribution, except for medicinal purposes, the period when that was illegal in the United States was an interesting one here on Capitol Hill. And there are rumors all over of hidden compartments and various places where things must have been hidden. And they create this kind of mythology around this. And I got to say, there are plenty of mysteries. We don't know why the Ohio clock is called the Ohio clock, but there are plenty of tales of this secret compartment is where, they hid the contraband during the Prohibition period. But I think a lot of them more likely are just quirks of the architecture, because as we've discussed, this is a building that's been built in so many different pieces,
Yes.
and each piece added on to the next, right? And every space enduring these constant changes in what the space is being used for over the years. And what's interesting about this room, the president's room, is it really only has this purpose.
Yes.
What we're seeing happening in here today, this is essentially, and it's a very small space. I want to emphasize that, folks, because space is at a premium inside the Capitol, and there is no such thing as wasted space or empty offices. No. But this particular space is set aside for this special purpose of the president using it on Inauguration Day. And again, this dates to a time when our president's term and our Congress's terms would be running out March 3rd or 4th, and there would be kind of a race to sign last-minute legislation in that beautiful president's room. Looking down at the rotunda here.
By the way, I think it's possible President Biden may not re-enter the president's room until either a State of the Union or, well, who knows in the future, but I wouldn't think he would be there maybe one or two more times.
It doesn't get used a lot. That's what we're saying. And for us to be able to see this moment of President Biden and VP Harris in the president's room, they've just concluded the signing ceremony. Also stored in this room are some gifts Congress received. There are some ceremonial gifts, particularly from other nations. So we're looking down at the rotunda because what's happening here is people are starting to gather. The spouses of the dignitaries that we were just seeing in the signing room starting to gather in this space for the presentation of gifts, which is going to be happening soon. Typically occurs actually during the inaugural luncheon. This year, because things are a little bit different than past years, there is no inaugural luncheon, and so this is being sort of modified for happening in the rotunda.
It's a 96-foot diameter, 108 windows in the rotunda. And can we tell in the center the discoloration? If you're thinking, was there a hole there? Yes, it was covered up. So the idea, the painting of George Washington glorified, you would look down through the hole or oculus to a statue of George Washington in the crypt, and then he would be with Mrs. Washington interred or reinterred, except much of that didn't happen.
Right. That was a part of the design that didn't end up happening. But right there in the center of the rotunda where we see some camera equipment and things now, that was intended to be this statue of George Washington. And actually, you can see the statue that was meant to go there. If you visit our friends at the Smithsonian American History Museum, they've got a Horatio Greenough statue of George Washington, an unusual view of Washington. We are not used to seeing him seated, wearing a classical Greco-Roman toga and sandals.
No, we're not.
And that was meant to sit right there in the middle of the rotunda. Now, there are some sculptures around the edge of the room. One of the oldest in this space is actually a statue of Thomas Jefferson, which Congress received as a gift.
1833.
And it sort of was the moment when they started to realize they could commission sculptures. There was a lot of thought put into the architecture of the Capitol and the artworks that are adhered to it, especially after the fire in the War of 1812 when we were concerned about fireproofing everything. And so paintings, sculpture are a little bit easier to be vandalized. And so there was an early emphasis away from them and onto things like frescoes and friezes that we've seen.
Now, the Ohio clock is on the right-hand side. They're coming past that area and other leadership offices.
So again, this is a view of the exterior of the Senate chamber, doors there. This Ohio clock we were talking about, it's one of the iconic artifacts inside the Capitol, iconic timepieces. It would be just out of view on your right-hand side, where you see those three folks there kind of in dark suits. Now, just out of view on your left-hand side, portrait of the first woman in the Senate, Hattie Caraway, and that's also obviously where we anticipate seeing the president and vice president emerge in a few seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to picture this. In the old chamber, Vice Senator Breckinridge said, let's pick up our desk and move them into the new chamber. That's how they moved there.
Yeah, so this is the door to the new Senate chamber.
Yes.
And again, when Ron and I talk old and new, we're talking the difference between about 1810 and about 1859. So new would be 1859. And so in there, behind those wooden doors, is where the Senate currently meets, using desks that came from their original chamber.
I wish I'll do it. So, Senate visitation and House visitation. Oh, do you have to be a certain age to visit the Senate?
So I will say that the House and Senate sessions are always open to the public.
Yes,
Anybody can come and watch. You can get a pass from your member, your representative, or your senator, and sit in and watch in the galleries. There are certain rules in the galleries about photography and applause and things like that, and Ron is alluding to...
You better be 6 years of age and older to visit the Senate. There's such a place called the Children's Room, where my colleagues have put me in timeout many a time there. And it's not far from that camera angle just gave you. Oh, what a view here. We see elements of all four branches, if I'm not mistaken, for review. And again, I mentioned this earlier. I had served in the 82nd Airborne Division for quite some time. And here they're coming out.
Here they go.
They'll be passing by Leader McConnell's office.
Now, once again, folks, you see the Capitol Police officer in uniform. The gentleman in the brown coat is United States Capitol Police Officer Eugene O. Goodman, who is serving as the acting Deputy Senate Sergeant at Arms for the day. Speaker Pelosi just went by there.
I didn't notice her without.
Cream-colored dress. She took off the turquoise coat we saw her in earlier. Senator Schumer and Blunt going by us there. And so as they passed us now in this corridor, they're about to pass by McConnell's office.
Janet, notice the floors have changed.
Fabulous view here of what's called the small Senate rotunda. So just off the rotunda, a small area there with the columns. It's actually an air shaft. If you were to look over that railing, you'd see down to the first floor of the Capitol, and it used to distribute light and air in the days before air conditioning and light bulbs and all the stuff that we have now.
Goes the House Sergeant of Arms, Senate Sergeant of Arms.
And our acting Deputy Senate Sergeant at Arms there in the light brown coat, that's Eugene Goodman, U.S. Capitol Police Officer. Folks, you may have seen some photos, video of him recently.
I mentioned the floors. Those are mosaics, which if you visit the Library of Congress, you'll see in abundance. It's the only area that we have mosaics in the Capitol. Look how President Jackson is dominating that room right now. Look at that posture on the right-hand side.
So these statues, again, are from the National Statuary Hall collection. Every state gets to send 2. There's VP Harris and Doug Emhoff, her husband, heading into the rotunda. And Dr. Jill Biden and President Biden heading into the rotunda. Surrounded by a phalanx here, including other dignitaries, as we discussed, sergeants at arms.
And remember, this is a scaled back.
Yes, this is a
scaled back operation.
Remember, this is fewer people than we would normally see at inauguration. So another incredible feature of this broadcast is that we have clear views of these folks that aren't too crowded. This is incredible.
I'm blown away.
As we look down in this direction, that's the door of the Senate at the very end of the hall, that wooden door with the rounded top that you see on it there. And again, if you were on tour with us, I would be asking you to please not point your camera at that door, because the United States Capitol Police like to keep that area secure. You can see some Capitol Police officers here flanking this north door into the rotunda. So the president entering the rotunda now.
Oh, look at that beautiful
All right.
painting.
Now, this is a painting selected by the chair of the JSIC.
And the First Lady and the Vice President and the second gentleman. Normally at this time, we have a lunch, and probably no person alive has attended more of those lunches than President Biden has. It's an important moment where it's bipartisan. It's the time to bond between the executive and the legislative branch of the government. We probably don't need as much bonding because we already have that natural bonding with you and the traditions here. By those traditions, usually there's a painting at the front of that event that the chairman picks. This time, not knowing we were going to have an event what we were going to do about an event until late, I asked Dr. Biden to help pick the painting, and this is the one that she recommended. The painting is landscape with rainbow. Rainbow, always a good sign. It's loaned to us for today from the Smithsonian American Art Museum. The artist, Dr. Robert Sheldon Duncanson, he was the best-known African-American painter in the years surrounding the Civil War. He was based in Cincinnati, encouraged by abolitionists who, among other things, sponsored a trip for him to do some study in Europe. This is a painting that he painted in 1859, and I think maybe it's sort of the classic America as a paradise painting that a lot of painters were doing then. But for him, a black artist painting this painting that's so much like an American utopia on the verge of a war that we would fight over slavery, makes all of that, I think, even more interesting in that while he faced lots of challenges, obviously was optimistic even in 1859 about America. And so, Dr. Biden, thanks for helping select this painting, and glad to have all 4 of you here as we move on to my good friend Senator Klobuchar.
I like the rainbow.
The rainbow is always a good sign. Let's hope so. Go right ahead.
A mixed race artist who created this painting, and it actually depicts essentially one of the last stop on the Underground Railroad.
Door number 2.
Moment on the river.
There we are. Good. Mr. President, First Lady, Madam Vice President, and our very first second gentleman, on behalf of the American people, it is our honor to present these custom-made crystal vases commemorating your historic inauguration. Lennox, which you know is a great company, American company, has handcrafted these gifts for the past 9 presidential inaugurations. It is a good thing I don't have to hand them to you personally. They each weigh, with the base, 32 pounds, but combined 64. But Jill, I know, is very strong and could take them both. Exactly. But the Lennox company is actually based in Bristol, Pennsylvania, which you know, Mr. President, is a mere 132 miles from Scranton, since we know today all roads lead to Scranton. The team at Lennox has worked for months to capture the spirit of this inauguration and your incoming administration. Mr. President, your vase features the White House, and Vice President Harris's features the U.S. Capitol. The gifts represent the hope and the faith the American people have placed in you to move our country forward. Thank you. Thank you.
As Senator Klobuchar mentioned, the Lennox Company is an American company. It's been around since 1889. President Wilson commissioned china for the White House from them, the first set of American-made White House china in 1918. Those lead crystal vases, 17 inches tall, she mentioned they weigh 32 pounds. They're all handmade in Pennsylvania by a craftsman named Peter O'Rourke.
Well, Mr. President, Madam Vice President, while the pandemic has sadly limited our usual hospitality, as others have mentioned, I'm very glad we still carry on some of our favorite inaugural traditions. It's my honor and privilege to help present these flags of our nation that were flown over today's event here at the Capitol. Now, I have to make one point of personal privilege on behalf of the Senate. With all due respect to our distinguished Speaker and our colleagues from the House, I have to note, not only did we just swear in a son and daughter of the Senate to these high offices, but indeed both these former senators skipped the House altogether. The Star-Spangled Banner is our greatest symbol of our endurance of the American idea. It flies over this building on triumphant days and on tragic ones, over all factions and all parties. And today this flag flew over our former colleague's inauguration as the very first female Vice President of the United States. So to our very distinguished former colleague, Madam Vice President, please accept this flag with the highest compliments and congratulations of the United States Senate.
Senator McConnell here presenting flags that have flown over the Capitol today during the 59th inaugural ceremonies. Speaker Pelosi, let's
The
listen.
distinguished leader of the Senate pointed out that he has hosted this lunch for members of the Senate who have become president and vice president. But I have the privilege of giving the flag to the President of the United States, the flag that was flown when you were sworn in, Mr. President. This flag may it reflect all that is said about your inauguration. America united. May it be a symbol of the hope, the healing, and the just all of the enthusiasm that you have for our country. And as we heard the beautiful national anthem, when we're at the stadium and they say, is our flag still there? Then you say, play ball, right there, play ball. So we're going to get ready to play ball. We're ready to go with the inspiration of our flag flying. But again, on behalf of the House of Representatives, it is my privilege to extend to you the flag that was flown the early moment that you were sworn in as President of the United States. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Dr. Biden. Thank you. If we had the lunch, we would have had California wine. Is that not right? Madam Vice President?
That is correct.
Mr. Emhoff, congratulations. With liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
These gifts are presented by the JSIC on the behalf of the American people. We've just seen flags presented that were flown over the Capitol today. And the next gift actually will be photo portraits of the president and vice president at the moment of their swearing in. And those photos had to be snapped.
Oh, so quickly.
Printed.
Escorted over.
Yeah, it was a real sprint. They have the mats all ready to go, and they just need to snap the photo in the moment and then get them printed and put the
Modern
frames
technology,
together.
Right? It's a good picture, too.
The Honorable
President
Kevin
Biden,
McCarthy.
Vice President Harris, Dr. Biden, and Mr. Imhoff, on behalf of Republicans in Congress, congratulations. Very proud of you both. When President Washington was sworn in as the first president of the United States, only a handful of people saw the ceremony or heard the famous first inaugural address. Today, the inauguration is seen around the nation and indeed around the world. Yet the task facing the nation is no less momentous than it was in Washington's time. I listened to your speech today. You talked among the tension and division. Our task as leaders is to bind this nation's wounds and dedicate ourselves to the values of all Americans share together. With modern technology, just a few minutes ago, it captured in these pictures. History in the making, for all the world to see. This picture should serve as a reminder of that task that we have before us. As a very proud son of California, it is my honor to present to a very proud daughter of California as well. Today, Vice President Harris made history, and all of America should celebrate that. But we should also remember that this is not the end, but just the beginning. As leaders, we are judged not by our words, but by our actions. So let's go forth from here together, accomplish great things for the American people. And every time you look at this photo, remember the beginning of the job we have to do. Congratulations.
Madam Vice President, Mr. Imhoff, Dr. Biden, Mr. President. No, Joe, you're Mr. President. And we are so proud of that. Dr. Biden, he makes you call him Mr. President? Marriage is about to get rocky, I can tell. On behalf of the Joint Congressional Committee on the Inaugural Ceremonies, I too am proud. More than that, I'm ecstatic to present the two of you this picture. A testament to technology and a testament to history. Mr. President, in your speech, you talked about faith. You talked about tribulations, but you talked about victory. The Johnson brothers wrote a great hymn. You know it well, Mr. President. Today, we have a new day. And that hymn came out of faith and out of deep trouble into hope. And they said, facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory's won. That's what your speech was about. And that's why we are so proud and ready to march with you, President Biden. God bless.
President Biden there checking out a photo of him taking the oath of office. It's just presented.
They're both different, you see.
Dr. King's bust in the background this past Monday, celebration of his holiday.
That bust of Dr. King was commissioned by Congress in 1986. It's been on that spot since 1989 in the rotunda. They're on the east side of the rotunda now. They're going to step through these east doors into the vestibule. See a statue of President Eisenhower there, given to us by the state of Kansas.
Now, friends, you might have been wondering, wait a minute, didn't I see President Clinton, Bush, Obama leave? Yes, to Arlington Cemetery. They're still working. They're placing a wreath at the 2 million soldier. So that's what was going on when they left. And then we had the ceremony here. There's President Dwight Eisenhower. Dwight David Eisenhower changed his name. Representing Kansas, a new memorial to him was dedicated last May.
Yes, the newest memorial on the National Mall is the
Yes.
Eisenhower Memorial. And again, these statues, some of the statues we're seeing, part of this National Statuary Hall collection. Every state gets 2. This collection was started in 1864, and there are 2 from each one of the 50 states. Only 6 states so far have given statues of presidents of the United States. And so
love it.
those statues are in the rotunda. Looking out of the east front steps now, preparing for the pass in review is going to be coming up soon. You can see the military cordon down both sides of the east front stairs. Figures of war and peace in the niches on either side of the door. We have a little bit of a better view of the figure of peace there. On our left, you can see her. Classical drapery just at the top of the column of military personnel on your left-hand side of the screen.
I mentioned earlier about everyone liking everything old. Look at the old light fixtures. Those were just made to look like that just very recently, within the last 3 to 4 years.
And a lot of elements that are exposed to the elements like that, like light fixtures and these sculptures on the exterior, a lot of times these are facsimiles because the original ones are being held somewhere where they can be preserved for future generations.
We haven't mentioned the architect of the Capitol, Mr. Blanton, who's the architect, but just the staff, what a tremendous job they do. From inside working to outside and all this that they have to do. It's quite a task.
Oh, you can see it's called a busby, that tall furry hat on the military there.
Notice the band.
And everybody's lined up and preparing for the pass and review to be starting pretty soon. We do have a video about that coming up in a little bit.
There's an old trolley stand there.
Oh, we've got some
Oh, look at that.
historic uniforms there. We've got some Revolutionary War style, fife and drum corps. So the coats that they're wearing, you can see those edges turned up. Those are called the facings. Those red edges that you see around the front edge of the coat. Traditionally, musicians will wear a different color. They will wear the inverse uniform of the main body of the military force, and that makes them identifiable because in times past, especially, people will be looking to the musicians for cues about movements, and also it marks them as non-combatants. So we tend to see very unusual and colorful uniforms on our military bands, such as the Marine Band we've seen today, the Fife and Drum Corps that we just saw, and even the Herald Trumpets, U.S. Army Herald Trumpets. Great view of the east front stairs here, waiting for President and Vice President to come out and review the troops.
I think if you're a certain age, you might think of this area, perhaps, at a certain age, President Kennedy's inauguration, perhaps, depending on, again, the age, you think of Blackjack Pershing and his line in state. Now, I know what you think, well, maybe perhaps your grandparents can remember their parents and the imagery and The newspapers covered, newspaper coverage.
Yeah, lying in state and lying in honor, ceremonies that have traditionally happened in the rotunda of the Capitol. This past summer, they had to do something a little bit different for Congressman John Lewis, where they actually put his casket kind of right out there in front of that east front door in order for people to file by on the outside. The lying in honor ceremony happened for the first time in 1998. Two Capitol police officers.
Also J.J.
that
Chestnut
year.
and John Gibson.
And in 2005, there was a lying in honor for Rosa Parks. And earlier this year, Justice Ginsburg. There also was a lying in honor for Reverend Billy Graham in years past. And then lying in state is something we tend to associate with presidents, but it's happened for a lot of people, as you mentioned a second ago. General Pershing, unknown soldiers, members of the House, Senate.
Well, who was, Henry Clay.
Yeah, he laid in state in the rotunda.
He's
the first. And then a few years later, when Lincoln was assassinated, that kind of cemented that tradition that we expect that to happen. And again, speaking of Lincoln, we're looking at the East Front steps where Lincoln was inaugurated. We actually have on display down in the Capitol Visitor Center a table.
It's stunning.
Yeah, so we have the table that Lincoln placed his notes on for his second inaugural address. And it's made from pieces of cast iron from the dome. So the cast iron, 9 million pounds of iron that makes up the dome of the Capitol. Since it's produced in pieces, there are multiples made. And if you've ever made anything using a mold yourself, sometimes they don't all come out perfectly even. So there was a pile of extra pieces and cast-offs. And the workmen working on the Capitol dome during the Civil War went through that pile of cast-offs, put together a balustrade column for the center as a pedestal for the table, some of the decorative elements for the outside to come down and make feet for it, and then they put a smooth top on it, presented to President Lincoln for his inauguration.
I think it's wonderful that American artists and artists from Italy that painted in the Capitol would often use workers in their artwork. The workers here, I love that.
Well, we even know that Constantino Bermedio painted that fresco inside the Capitol dome, used some of the iron workers for his models.
Charles Thomas, the superintendent, foreman.
Particularly for the scene of mechanics that has Vulcan at an anvil and forge, and he needed people to kind of stand in as models to represent the workers in that forge. Remember today's inaugural theme, forging a more perfect union.
Yes.
Determined democracy. Looking at the East Front here, backed out a little bit so that you can see a little bit of the historic Capitol on either side of the stairs.
Friends, if you were to come to Washington and walk around the Capitol, even in the evening, when it's dark, the building will teach you something. You will learn something. You'll pass a member of Congress at night and not know it. And you'll go by 20 yards later and someone will say, wasn't that so-and-so that just walked past? I believe so.
Oh, here they come for the reviewing of troops. Now, I was just going to say, Calvin Coolidge's inauguration, the first one to be broadcast by radio, 1925. And the first one for TV, Truman, 1949. The cables for people to watch it in the Midwest had literally just been installed a few weeks before. Folks on the West Coast still couldn't watch Truman's inauguration.
Oh, that'd be nice if we could hear some of the commands. That would be nice, yes.
We can hear the applause.
I know those two words, forward march. I think I've uttered that a time or two. Let's listen and watch. Janet, what if I were to tell you that in one day you would have a new job and change your place of residence in the same day? What would you say to that?
Seems like a lot. And a new ride.